Hi, this is Dave Lappin, and welcome to another episode of the Coherence Field podcast. Today, I want to talk about something that has really become an important discovery for me over the past several months, and that's the idea of softening the body as a gateway to regulating the nervous system. Now, when most people hear about nervous system regulation, the first thing they think about is breathing techniques, box breathing, slow breathing, breath counts, things like that. And those things absolutely help. But interestingly enough, something happened in my own experience that showed me that there's actually an even earlier step that can make a big difference. And that step is simply softening the body. What's fascinating is that I did start out intentionally trying to do this. It actually showed up in my awareness through an experience I had after a massage. And I had mentioned this before, but when I got home after that massage, I noticed something very unusual. My entire body felt incredibly smooth. That's really the best word I use to describe it. Not loose, but smooth and fluid. There was this sense that tension wasn't getting caught anywhere in my body. Everything just felt like it could move easily, almost like my body had become more liquid instead of solid. And that moment really stood out to me because it felt like my nervous system had shifted into a very settled and coherent state. Another experience, and one that was unexpected and certainly profound for me. I was at the local Y sitting by myself in a sauna. I was just sitting there, relaxed and moving into a state of quiet, of stillness. Shortly thereafter, my body again began feeling smooth, like I had experienced previously after a massage. And then, to my surprise, this may sound weird, the entire sauna felt smooth. It was like my body and the sauna were one and the same almost. Apparently, the warmth of the sauna was a trigger for this to happen, especially since I had previously practiced softening the body. Since then, I've been paying a lot more attention to the relationship between muscle tension and nervous system regulation. What I began to notice is that when the nervous system is even slightly on alert, the body tends to tighten in subtle ways. For example, the jaw tightens a little, the shoulders lift, the diaphragm gets restricted, and the belly pulls in. Sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it because it becomes just a normal background pattern. And apparently this was the case for me, even though I had done decades of meditation and practicing Reiki. I like to say that this experience was a game changer for me. But those little areas of tension that we have send signals back to the brain that say, stay alert, stay ready. So the body and the nervous system keep reinforcing each other in this loop of mild activation. What I discovered is that when you intentionally soften those areas, and you don't have to soften much, maybe as little as 5%, something interesting begins to happen. The nervous system begins to settle, and it often happens faster than what you might expect. And what's even more interesting is that when the body softens, the breath often changes on its own. So instead of trying to control the breath, it naturally becomes slower, deeper, and smoother. In other words, the body begins to regulate itself. And this is where the idea of coherence starts to come into play. When the nervous system settles, several systems in the body begin to synchronize more effectively. Heart rhythm, breathing rhythm, muscle tone, and attention. You start to feel more steady, more grounded, more present. And that's the state many people describe as coherence. Now, the good news is that this doesn't require a complicated practice at all. In fact, it can be incredibly simple. And I think it's so simple it would be easy to overlook or dismiss. So let me share a few steps that people can experiment with if they want to explore this idea of softening the body. The first step is simply awareness. Take a moment and notice where your body might be holding tension right now. Common places include the jaw, the shoulders, the neck, the chest, the diaphragm, and the belly. You don't have to change anything yet. Just noticing is already a powerful step. The second step is intentional softening. Gently allow the jaw to loosen. Let the shoulders drop a little. Allow the belly to relax instead of holding it in. Sometimes I even imagine the muscles melting or becoming warm and fluid. You don't have to force relaxation. Just give the body permission to soften. The third step is letting the breath follow the body. Instead of trying to take deep breath, simply notice what the breath wants to do once the body softens. Often it becomes slower and deeper on its own. And sometimes you'll notice a small pause at the end of an exhale. That's a sign the nervous system is beginning to settle. The fourth step is simply resting in that state for a moment. You might notice a sense of warmth, steadiness, or a feeling that your body is more spacious or fluid. Even 30 seconds to a minute in that state can begin to shift the nervous system toward greater balance. Over time, this practice becomes easier and more natural. What is also happening, and this is important, is that you are removing interference. You're getting out of your own way. You have to remember that the body is an intelligent system. It knows how to self-regulate when we stop interfering. You start to recognize earlier when your body begins to tighten, and you can soften it before the nervous system ramps up too much. And something else begins to happen as well. When the body stays softer and the nervous system stays more regulated, your overall sense of coherence can become more stable. You feel less reactive, stress tends to pass through the body more quickly, and there's often a greater sense of clarity and calm. For me personally, the simple idea of softening the body had become one of the most reliable ways to support nervous system regulation. It's something that can be done anywhere. Sitting in a chair, standing in line, walking, even during conversations. Just a moment of noticing and softening. And sometimes that's all the nervous system needs to shift back into a more coherent state. So if you're curious about exploring this, try it a few times throughout your day. Just pause, notice your body, and gently soften whatever might be holding tension. You may be surprised how quickly the body knows what to do. And that simple shift can become the beginning of a much more stable and coherent nervous system. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.